Hey, you 12s, welcome to Friday's lesson. Today we're going to talk about changing the terms of the loan and how to save some serious money. Hopefully by now you're familiar with how a reducing balance home loan works or just a loan in general. And yeah, let's get on with it. So there's a couple of ways you can save money off your loan, and give this video a pause to see if you can guess the ways you can do that. All right, so if you said something along the lines of a lower interest rate, you're correct. If you said something along the lines of increasing your repayments, you're also correct. And here's how. So if we take a look at this first graph, what we have is a original balance on a $100,000 loan over the duration of 40 years. Okay, so 100,000 goes to zero after 40 years. The reason why this line is so flat and takes ages to decrease is because of that interest. Remember, when you start out on a loan, you pay a lot of interest to the bank as a cost of borrowing for that money. Now, here what we have is a 9% loan that's compounded monthly with regular repayments on a monthly basis of $771. But the green line, okay, is significantly steeper, and we see that it finishes around, probably 28 years rather than 40 years. So we can save 12 years of repaying the bank. And how do we do that? Well, here we've increased repayments, and we've increased it by just $100 each and every month, okay? Starting from year 5. So after the 5th year, okay, this person decided to pay $100 more, so $871 instead of $771. And what that did was it shortened the loan by 12 years. Pretty crazy, right? So by shortening it by 12 years, here it says 14 years, okay, so this took 26 years to pay off. The interest paid is reduced by $105,156. So, yes, that's substantial. That's probably, 2 years worth of wage, okay, after tax. And keep in mind, that doesn't include your everyday spending. So, biggest tip to you guys is once you do get a mortgage, or if you get a car loan, whatever it might be, okay, don't go by their minimum repayment. You always want to repay more, all right? And then we're going to figure out how to calculate that on the financial solver. Here we've got an example of a 12-month loan. And what you notice is in the 8th month, okay, they've forgotten to repay. So they didn't repay any any payment at all. And what happens is the interest actually stacks onto the principal, and you end up having to pay more. And that drags out that loan so much longer, okay? So you hear people deferring their loans for 6 months at the moment due to COVID. Well, depending on the size of the loan and what's left on it, that could be, 50 to 200 grand, $200,000 that is, in the long run. Okay, so it's not a great thing to defer. You never want to defer your loan, because all that interest, the bank is behind the scenes just stacking it on, even though it's not being added to your balance in this current 6-month frame. Right, at the end of the 6 month, all this interest is going to be topped up to what you currently owe, and then it's going to be a mountain and a half. All right, so whilst it's temporary relief, it's certainly something you want to avoid. Here we've got our first example. So we're going to take a look at the effect of a changing interest rate. When you get a home loan, you can get a fixed rate, meaning for the duration of your home loan, your interest rate is going to be the same each and every year. You cannot change it. Why do people do that? A lot of people like to gamble, and they think that if they get a rate at the right price, they're banking on the Reserve Bank to not cut it any lower than whatever they get it at, and they'll fix it. Okay, some people choose a variable rate, and that goes off whatever the Reserve Bank tells the other banks to do. So the Reserve Bank is like the big, it's like the big organisation behind all the banks, like Commonwealth Bank, Westpac, ANZ, NAB, Bendigo Bank, all the banks. Okay, listen to the Reserve Bank, and the Reserve Bank has an interest rate, and at the moment it's at 0.25%, which is the lowest in, I think, ever. And that's why they change it, is a story for another time. But let's take a look at the effect of interest rate changes to a personal loan. So Christian here borrows $100,000 at 8% per annum, and this is compounded monthly. And it's to be repaid over 10 years. So whenever you get a loan, the bank will always tell you how long you've got to repay that loan and what your minimum repayment is. That's calculated by them, not you. But that minimum repayment of $1,213.28 here, you can actually voluntarily increase it by just putting money into either your offset account or contributing it to your loan account. Okay. We'll talk about offset accounts some other time if you're ever interested, but that's just another way of saving or adding repayments essentially. So here the bank set the minimum at $1,213.28. Okay, after 5 years, the interest rate is reduced by 0.5% to 7.5% per annum. So what we need to figure out is the key details. So we've underlined and highlighted the key critical details, and our task here is find the new repayment required for Christian to pay off the loan in the same amount of time. So what that means is there's two parts. We have to figure out how much is left on the loan after the first 5 years, and then what the payment is for him to repay it in 5 years' time when the interest rate changes to 7.5%. All right, so here we have the first 5 years. We've got 60 payments because it's monthly compounding. All right, and here's the other trick. So just a quick pause on the example. When you get out there in the real world, you're going to get options. The bank's going to say, do you want to pay this monthly, weekly, or fortnightly? You always want to go weekly because the quicker you make repayments, the lower you decrease the principal, and ultimately that's going to reduce how much you're going to pay in total after 30, 40 years. And going from monthly to weekly, you could save upwards $250,000 just on a home loan, depending on how big or how much you borrow. So here we've got 60 repayments, okay, because 5 years, there's 12 months each year, 5 times 12, there's 60 months in 5 years. Our interest rate is 8% per annum. Remember, you put this into your financial solver. The present value, imagine we're holding out our hand. Is the bank giving us money? Yes, they are. So that's why it's going to be a positive. So we've got cash in hand, 100,000. Our payment means, well, we're putting away $1,213.28 to the bank every month. So that's why it's a negative. And we're figuring out the future value. Now the PY and CY we've got at 12 because it's compounded monthly. All right, if you drag your cursor down to the FV, once you fill that out, press enter, and what you get is $59,836.57. So that's how much is left on what's his name? Christian's loan account after 5 years at 8% interest, and he's paying the minimum. Now, to figure out how he can pay this off in 10 years at 7.5%, well, what we do is we say there's still 5 years left on the loan, and he's still making monthly repayments. So he's still going to have 60 months of repayments to make. And so what that means is we put the present value now at $59,836.57 because we've repaid, well, just over 41,000. Okay, so originally we had 100,000. Now we're sitting at $59,836.57 left in the account. We're trying to figure out his payment because that's what the question asks. The question asks, find the new repayment. So we leave that blank, okay? And our future value is 0 because we're figuring out, well, how much he needs to pay for this to decrease to 0 in the space of 5 years. PY, CY still at 12 because it's compounded monthly, all right? So you fill this out, you drag your cursor to the payment section, and what you get is negative $1,199. So for Christian to pay this loan off at 7.5% with 5 years left on it and $59,836.57, okay, he's got to pay $1,199 at minimum each month. Now, how good is that? If we check this out, how much does Christian save due to the interest rate cut? Originally, he was paying a minimum of $1,213.28. If you multiply that by 60, which is how long he had to pay that for, remember 60 months, 5 years, he totaled $72,796.80 in the first 5 years. If he were to pay $1,199 in the last 5 years, well, he only has to pay $71,940 over that 5-year period. So you do some simple subtraction of the two, and you figure out he's saved $856.80 in the last 5 years of his loan because of that 0.5% interest rate cut. So whenever you hear the Reserve Bank making interest rate cut, you might be thinking, well, it's only going from like 0.5 to 0.25, or back in the day, it used to be 4.25, and they dropped it to 3.75 once. And people are like, well, that's only 0.5%. What's the deal? Well, if you're borrowing millions of dollars, this figure, by just dropping it by only 0.5%, could be upwards $350,000. Okay, so if you want to make some serious money, go get yourself a business or find a business idea. And if you learn how to manage debt, then you can save a lot of money. And this is as good as a pay increase, essentially, because instead of paying that amount of $72,000, okay, you're paying $856 less, which means you get to spend this money on whatever you like. That's Christian, that is. Here we've got example 2. So changing the repayments. Remember, there's multiple ways to save money on a home loan or a loan in general on the reducing balance rate. Here we're going to, I think, increase our repayments, and we're going to see what happens. So Andrew took out a reducing balance loan for $60,000 with the interest calculated monthly at a rate of 10.25% per annum. So what you'll find is the lower you borrow, so if you're borrowing $50,000, generally the interest rate is going to be so much higher compared to a home loan, where if you borrow $500,000, you're looking at home loans. So my home loan currently is like 2.78%. So 10.25%, that's ridiculous. That's super high. And that's also based on whatever the Reserve Bank is set in the market at. He makes monthly repayments of $918.41. Remember, that's just set by the bank. Okay, the bank will tell you at minimum you have to repay, Andrew, $918.41. At this rate, how long will it take Andrew to repay the loan? So we're trying to figure out the duration, so we leave the N section blank in our financial solver. We fill out the interest rate at 10.25. Our present value is $60,000 positive because we're getting a loan, so we're sticking our hand out, and the bank's given us positive $60,000 to spend on whatever we like for our business or car, whatever Andrew's borrowing to pay for. And then our minimum repayment is $918.41. So we put that in negative for the payment section. We're figuring out how long it takes to get to 0, so to fully repay it. So that's why the future value here is 0. And it's compounded monthly, so PY and CY are both 12 because 12 months in a year. You drag your cursor to the N, you press enter, and you get 95.999. Remember, no matter what the decimal is, you always round up for these sort of questions. All right, so it'll take Andrew 96 months or 8 years to repay this loan in full. Now that we know how long it takes, the second question says, well, after 3 years, he increases his monthly repayment to $1,200. So he's adding on almost $300 more than his minimum, okay, by choice. Remember, you can repay as much as you like whenever you have a loan. The bank will only care about if you're not meeting the minimum target. So he's decided to add on almost $300 more. By how many months is the length of the loan reduced by? So this is going to happen 3 years into the loan. So what we do here is we say, well, the first 3 years, 36 months, because we're dealing with monthly compounded periods. The interest rate is at 10.25. We had $60,000 to start with. This was our original payment of $918.41. And we're trying to see what's left on the tab, essentially, or the bank balance after the first 3 years. So PYCY is still 12 because it's compounded monthly. And what we figure out is, well, Andrew still has $42,975.73 left on his account after 3 years. Now, at this point, he's going to increase his payment to $1,200. All right, remember that's negative because that's leaving his hand. And that's a significant increase from the original $918.41. And so here we're going to figure out how long it's going to take, because that's ultimately what the question's asking. How many months is the length of the loan going to be reduced by? Okay, so we're talking about duration, months, duration. We're going to try and figure that out. Here we've got 10.25%, the account balance after 3 years, his new payment value of $1,200. We're going to figure out how long it's going to get to zero, and PYCY is still 12 because it's compounded monthly. Remember, if it's compounded weekly, this would be 52. If it was compounded fortnightly, it'd be 26. If it's compounded quarterly, it'd be 4. Okay, so this PYCY value depends on the question and the scenario. Once we've got that, drag your cursor to the N and press enter. And what we get is 42.93. So it'll take Andrew 43 months to repay the remainder of the loan. Now, here's what's critical. This 42.93 isn't a whole number, meaning the last repayment is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to take a look at it in a moment. But what we figured out was the first 3 years, it took 36 months. And then it will take another 43 months to pay the loan off after the increase in total. So that adds up to 79 months. Okay, so the original would have taken 96 months. Why? Because where was it? This answer back in A, 96 months, was the duration at paying, $918.41 per month. All of a sudden, Andrew fast-tracked it. He's repaying more. It's going to shorten the length of the loan, and it only takes 79 months based on his $1,200 repayment per month after 3 years. So he's saved essentially 17 months on his loan. 17 months, so that's a year and almost a half. Okay, so a year and 5 months. And so part C, they ask us, find the amount saved in interest by increasing the size of the monthly repayment. So what we do here is we go and calculate what he would have paid in total originally with $918.41 as a minimum. So that was over a 96-month period, and he would have paid 96 times the minimum, $88,167.36. Now we compare that to what he's going to pay once he's increased it to $1,200 after 3 years. Well, there's actually a little tricky step before. Okay, so I guarantee people are going to forget this in the SAC. Financial and matrices isn't as mellow as data. It's one of the biggest tripping points in the exam too. And remember our answer of 42.93, I think. So we had an answer back here. 42.93 is how many payments he needs to make. No one can make 42.93 payments. You make 43. Okay, you don't go, oh, I'm going to pay in 0.93 terms. That's not the case. So what it means is he's going to pay 42 times with $1,200 repayments. But the last repayment is going to be slightly less because it's 0.93 of that value. You can use a CAS to figure it out, but you can actually do it arithmetically too. So if you go 1,000, see if this actually works. 1,200 was what he was paying times 0.93. No, it doesn't work. All right, never mind. Let's just stick with the CAS. So in your CAS, you go back to the original parameters that we had up here. And yep, so back up here. And what you do is you plonk in 42, okay, because that's the whole number nearest to 42.93. Okay, remember, you plonk that here and then you press enter on the future value, and what you get is negative $1,107.99 left on that last repayment. Okay, so if Andrew were to repay $1,200 in the last repayment, he'd be overpaying by, $92. Okay, and we don't want that. We don't want to give the bank more money than we owe. So that's why we got to calculate this last payment before we add the new payment total together. All right. Once we've got that value, we've got the first 3 years payment in 36 times 918.41 cents. And then we add that with the remainder of 42 months at $1,200, and then the final repayment of $1,107.99. This totals together $84,570.75. So because he increased his repayment from $918 to $1,200, Andrew has managed to save $3,596.61 once we take the original minimum repayment total amount and deduct it from the new repayment. Okay, and so he saved $3.5 grand just by adding just under $300 more to his monthly repayment. And that takes a lot of discipline. When you're out and about, you got a lot of bills, you probably want to spend money on a lot of things. There's just a lot to buy. That's just the way the world is now with online shopping. But $300 a month, that's pretty reasonable, right? If you figure out you can end up saving $3,596 in your loan. Okay, so those are some really important tips. And if you ever are curious, the government's actually got a home loan calculator, but I won't show you too much of it because then you might use it to calculate home loans in the questions instead of using the CAS. But moneysmart.gov is a good way to make a visual comparison. All right, so here you've got the how can I repay my loan sooner? So great tool to use when you're comparing different banks down the track. Obviously, not everything's for the exam, right? So this is real life as it gets. And you can fiddle around with repayment frequency, and don't worry about the fees so much. That's just a thing down the track you're going to encounter. And then what it'll do, it'll spit out a graph. Okay, so let's actually do one as an example. So what's usually the median at Manor Lakes? I think it's about the housing price about $540,000. So let's say we take a $500,000 loan out. Let's say we're making $2,000 repayments per month, okay, at an interest rate of well, the average now is 2.91. So let's use 2.91. Let's say there's no fees because the bank's generous, but that's never going to happen. You're always going to get some fees. Mine's about $350 per year. And what you've got is a nice little graph saying, well, if you're making $2,000 monthly repayments at 2.91%, here's your principal of $500,000. There's your interest that you're going to pay the bank to borrow that money, $269,624 after 32 years. Okay, but we can also compare an alternative. So if we use the average, all of a sudden, let's say we're making $2,500 monthly repayment. All of a sudden, okay, we've just tacked on $500 more to our monthly repayment. And what you notice is principal amount was still the same, but we've shaved basically almost 10 years off the loan from 32 years to 22 and 10 months. And all it was adding $500 more to that loan each and every month. Now, you can see the interest comparisons, $269,624 compared to $184,941. So, hey, big savings, right? Because interest, okay, compounds on the principal, and if you're repaying more, you're actually deducting the principal quicker, meaning the percentage charge on that principal can't build ahead of steam, and that's how you ultimately save time and money. Now, if we change the frequency, so let's say we go fortnightly at 1,000. Okay, so same rate, we're just making quicker repayments. So previously we were paying $2,000 per month. Okay, well, half of it's 1,000, right? And fortnight is half of a month. So all of a sudden you see we changed the repayment frequency. We're still saving a good old, what's that? 769, take away 733, just about $36,000 and a half we're saving, okay? By paying the same amount, but at a quicker increment. Now imagine if we pay that at $500 at a weekly rate. Same amount, right? A quarter of a month is a week. A quarter of $2,000 is $500. Same interest rate. And look at this. We've still saved ultimately some money here at 28 years. So some time and also some money. All right. Here we've saved about 37,000. All right. So slightly more than that week fortnightly repayment. So whenever you become an adult and you get a loan, make sure you want to repay at a higher frequency. Make sure you get the lowest interest rate possible. And always ask a mortgage broker to see if you can find a better deal, because they're free. They only charge commission from the bank. So the bank actually pays the mortgage broker as a way of saying thank you for getting this new customer in. So you don't pay a broker at all. And what other tips have I got? I think that's about it. But let me know if you have any other questions just in general about how loans work, what the terminologies are. Again, if you do commerce, you've got a slight advantage like accounting or a economic subject, or maybe even business management. But yeah, let me know if you have any difficulties with Solver. I'm not getting a lot of questions, so it's a little bit concerning. Either we're getting this completely or we're not getting it at all. So let me know. Thanks, everyone.